Welcome to Six Figure Coaches with Luke Charlton, where every week we interview a successful coach and break down their business. We take you behind the scenes in their marketing, advertising, and sales campaigns. We show you what's working. We show you their frameworks, their proven strategies, so you can implement them in your business to grow. Now let's bring on this week's guest. Here is your host, Luke Charlton. Hey, this is Luke Charlton here, and welcome to Six Figure Coaches with Luke Charlton. Very excited to have you here on the inaugural episode of this podcast. And I've got an amazing guest coming on today. Really excited for today's guest because who I've decided to bring on today is actually a mentor of mine. And his name's Jason Hornung. And I met Jason back in 2015. I actually bought his coaching, his Facebook ad course back in 2015. And then I ended up working with Jason and applying to work with him in his agency. So out of about 50 people, I got the gig and ended up working with Jason in his agency. And I went from spending about $20 a day on my own ads to like over $100,000 a month, like literally overnight. Like Jason will tell you, just threw me in the deep end. So we'll bring Jason on in just a second. But I wanted to have Jason on for this very first episode because even to this day, even after all these years, I'm still learning from Jason. Like I run my own agency now, getting results for clients, helping them launch and scale their own ad campaigns. And yet after all these years, I'm still investing with Jason. That is, that's how good he is. And that's how good his marketing and sales processes are. That's what I'm so excited to dive into today. So with that being said, just before we bring Jason on, so this is the Six Figure Coaches with Luke Charlton. This is the very first episode. If you are a coach that wants to be celebrated and promoted on this show, just go to what's the link? It'll be podcast.lukecharlton.com and you can apply there. So we obviously have a very specific type of coach that we want to bring on this show. These are high-level coaches doing over $250,000 per year. If that's you and you want to be celebrated and promoted to our audience, just go to podcast.lukecharlton.com. So with that being said, without further ado, Jason, super excited to have you here. Welcome to the show, the very first episode. As I said, I wanted to have you on first because you've had such an impact on my life. I think, remember how we went? So I went to Jamaica with Jason. So Jason took, when I was in his team, we went to Bali first and you couldn't come, Jason, because your passport was like expired. But then we went to Jamaica. And remember how we recorded those videos, those testimonial videos? Mm-hmm. And I spoke about how that was like a few years ago now. Even back then, you transformed my life. But the skill of turning paid advertising into high-paying clients, which we'll talk about today, has transformed my life. I just give maybe people a background as to how you got in, like where you got started with advertising and what type of impact it's had on you and your business.
Sure. So, I mean, I got started with advertising back in 2005, actually. I started my first business was an insurance agency that I started in 2003. And what they teach you to do for marketing is to cold call and door knock. That was it. So, I mean, I didn't know any better. I was only 23 at the time. So I just did what they told me to do. But I'd work like 80 hours a week. I forced myself to do 300 cold calls a day. And I would do that 7 days a week. Wow. And I would walk into 15 businesses a week and literally just talk to the business owner and just say, hey, this is who I am. Can I quote your insurance?
Yeah, wow.
It was a pretty big lesson in accepting rejection, right? Which I think a lot of people don't really have that skill set these days. You know what I mean? Like,
it reminds me. So I was in London and for a year and I failed miserably. At the end of my time in London, this is back in 2013. And one of the reasons that kind of led me to advertising, because I'm like, I can't do this anymore, was I was like literally door knocking on restaurant doors because a mentor at the time said, look, mobile applications are really hot, like mobile apps. Like I was just trying to find a way to generate money. And he's like, just try and sell a mobile app. It wasn't even my coaching. So I was going like knocking on doors and just getting rejection after rejection. I didn't sell one thing. So I totally understand.
Well, I was selling stuff, but I was burned out. And I had, like, when I started that business, my second, I had one kid that was 6 years old already. I had another that was 2 months old. And then during that first 2 years when I'm doing all this cold calling and door knocking, I had my last child. So I had 2 little babies and a toddler at home, or a young kid at home.
Yeah, wow.
And I was missing all that time. My family life was terrible. And so like, I was burned out as well at the end of that 2 years. And I was just like, I just got to figure out a way to get people coming to me. I have to do something different, you know? All I did was I just started Googling attraction marketing. That was all I could think of, like the term that came to my head. And that landed me on a book, this book right here, this exact book.
Dude,
right
I got that in my cupboard right here. Yeah.
The Ultimate Sales Letter by Dan Kennedy. I found a sales letter for this book online. And I read this book, and this book is all about writing advertising, right? It's like, this was direct mail advertising was the thing back in the day. Online hadn't really become a thing yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so this guy convinced me that if I could write words that sold my control my income. And here I am. I don't have a college degree.
Yep.
Right. I'm just like a guy trying to make, put food on the table for his family. And I don't want to work a whole bunch. You know what I mean? So I started doing what he was telling me. Didn't work at all at first. None of it did. Right. But I know it wasn't because what he was saying. It was because of my execution. I hadn't gotten good at it.
That's the thing. That's different though. So most people think that it's because of the strategy, right?
Exactly.
They don't associate the bad results with them and their own message. They think it's
nobody puts it on them. Nobody wants to accept responsibility for their own actions these days. They want to take something that somebody says like this. They do a really job of executing on it, poor ideas, put it together really poorly, put it out there. Of course it bombs. And then, it's this rip me off. It's a scam. Right.
I'll have to put an explicit label on this first episode.
Yeah. Sorry. I got the problem with cussing, but that's the thing. That's what happens. Right? And it's even worse today. Right. And that's part of the reason why people fail. But this is how I got into advertising. I started doing all this stuff, and eventually on I think it was like my 5th or 6th letter that I wrote. And it would back then, in order to test a letter, it would cost me a minimum of $1,000 to mail a letter.
Jeez.
Right? Because I had to buy stamps, I had to print the stuff, I had to buy ink. You had to do all this crazy stuff to the envelopes. You'd get like fancy envelopes and grabbers, and you'd test all these different little things. You'd have to buy a mailing list. Yeah. Right. And that was just to get maybe 500 letters in the mail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like imagine having to pay, that much today.
Well, right? with the webinar, you kind of do, right? You probably have to spend $2,000 just to test a webinar. I mean, there's different funnels.
Yeah. But you don't have to, fall all the way to sale, but you can test smaller. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's easier to test smaller with the digital stuff, right? You can. You don't have to outlay a lot of money. Exactly.
I mean, I don't teach webinars anymore because of the cost of ads. There's better ways which we can get into. Mm-hmm. But I like that lesson of. I mean, again, most people don't take responsibility. Most people will go, it's a 5-day challenge that doesn't work for me, or the webinar strategy, or whatever the funnel is. And then they go to the next funnel and the next funnel. But, a broken message, a funnel won't fix a broken message.
No, it won't. And so I've seen this many times. And then usually what happens is by the time they've hopped around from all the gurus and none of it's worked, that's when they land on me. Yeah. They've already paid way more to these other clowns that don't actually get them results than when they get to me. And they don't want to pay my fees that are lower. They're kind of questionable about it, which is weird. You know what I mean? But then I actually fix it for them by focusing on the message, because that's one of the core tenets of what I learned from Dan Kennedy. Yeah. What works is the offer. That's what converts people. Yeah. Right? And one of the things that I developed over the years, and I taught you this, is that advertising is only 2 things. It's 3rd grade math and basic human psychology.
Yeah.
If you can master those 2 things, on the meta level, you can do successful advertising. Now, there's a lot of nuance depending on what media you're doing it in and stuff like that. Could require a lot of technical skill and things like that. But on a meta level, that's advertising in its most base form.
It's funny that you mentioned about the offer. So I recorded I have another podcast that I do, a daily podcast. I just recorded on my phone, and just a few episodes ago, I spoke about how basically about the time that I bought your course in 2015 and then started working with you. I was really into copywriting. But as the years go by, I actually focus way less on the copywriting and way more on just making sure we have a good offer, right? Making sure you're solving a really painful problem and that it's a good offer that promises to solve that. And I know if we have just that, the copy is like literally like 5 to 10% of the results. I just know if we have a great offer at a good, as I said with math, right, but at a good price point, good sales process to get them on the call and close them, your campaigns will be profitable. So maybe we'll talk about that because it's so critical. Like when you say like you need to have a good offer, right? What do you consider a good offer? Like how do you approach that?
Yeah, and so let's just talk about the term offer for a minute, right? Because I think a lot of people get confused on what exactly that is and how it all fits in these things. And I think there's multiple layers to it, right?
Yep.
So like when I'm first thinking of an offer on the bigger picture level, it's the value exchange that we're providing to the market. Right.
Yep.
What is the outcome that we're promising people? Right.
Yep.
That's what we're helping them to do. That's what our offer is. Right.
Yep.
Now, part of our offer is the pricing, right?
Yep.
And the presentation of what we're going to do for people. Most people think of that as the offer, and what we're saying in those things as the offer, right? That's a big problem, right? So we have to think first about what are we actually doing for the people and explaining to them how we're going to provide the outcome that they're looking for. And in order for the offer to work, this is something I learned from Travis Sago. All right. So you got to have immediate urgency behind it for them to buy now, because there's two types of, avoidances of pain or getting of gain. That's what people buy. They either buy something that's going to avoid pain or get a gain. Right. Now there's either something that has an urgent, immediate need, or there's some kind of future need to it. Right. Now, a lot of people, they focus on future kind of needs, right? Like, oh, make $100,000 a month 6 months from now. That's a future need. Whereas fix your ad campaign that's losing money right now, that's an urgent, immediate need. Right. So most people focus on the future stuff, which that inherently is harder to sell when we use that kind of method.
I'm like nodding because I'm just like agreeing with everything that everything that I teach. I'm like, yep, keep going.
So that's what when I'm thinking of an offer, it's always first that value exchange, right? And then what are the things that I'm going to do for people in order to create that outcome, right? Because those are the components of my offer, right? My offer is to help them achieve this outcome. Right. Then I have these things that I do for them. Those are the components of my offer that I explain when I'm presenting what I'm going to do for them as part of my offer package.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly how I think about it too. So when I think about the offer, I'm the same. It's like, it's the promise, right? It's the outcome. And then you've got the package, which is like, a really basic kind of way to think about it is you've got the promise, the process, and the price. And the promise is obviously the result that you're promising. The process, deliverables, coaching, how much coaching you're doing, do they get a course, what's in the course, and then the price. That's the whole package. But the best way, again, this is coming back to what I was saying about like, I just focus on creating a good offer. All I do with the coaches that I work with is like, okay, what's just a really painful problem? Let's just forget about like the stuff that they want to do in the future. I know if we just pick a really clear, painful problem, that's 80% of the success of your advertising campaign. Like, so for example, we had a client I run ads for, and she helps couples that have going through infidelity, right? So really clear, painful problem. So basically, I will help save your marriage after infidelity is what she does. So a lot of my coaching, working with the client, is just let's just get clear on like what's the one pain, and this is what people really, really struggle with. You say, what do you do? And they're kind of like all over the place. It takes them like 10 minutes to explain what they do, when really you should be able to go, I help with this problem. I help this target market with this specific problem. And the problem should be able to be communicated in like 1 to 3 words, like really simple. And so that's what I find. If I get that right, then the rest is so easy to make the campaigns convert. It's just mathematics. So making sure you have got a good priced offer, like it's at a higher price.
Exactly.
But that's the main thing, is that problem, and ideally a unique problem, because then we're getting into a bit more of a niche that is a bit easier to convert if it's a niche.
Absolutely. 100%. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. So once people have like their offer, and again, we're talking to coaches here that are generally, they're either trying to fill like a one-on-one program or a group program, right? So generally it's like a 3 to 5K, sometimes higher, but kind of newer coaches, right? So generally that 3 to 5K range. Is there a particular strategy that you recommend that a coach takes if they're in that position? They're just getting into paid advertising. They want to make sure that they don't waste a ton of money on their ads. They understand now, okay, it's about creating a good offer first. What's next? Like, what do you recommend?
Well, so once we got the offer in place, now the offer itself is going to dictate the process that we use to bring people in to try to convert them into that offer to a large degree, right? So now, if I'm going to recommend to somebody what's a best practice for developing that process, or now I'm going to start to refer to that as a funnel, right? So we're all on the same page. So when you're trying to decide what funnel are you going to use to drive ads into to try to convert people into this offer, right? Well, if you're starting out from scratch, you got to be building a list. You really need to be doing some sort of lead gen with your advertising. So in today's day and age, what I would be doing is some form of lead magnet, actually.
Yeah, and why? Just curious, like why? I mean, I teach that, so I know why. But like, why do you say start with lead gen?
For many reasons. First of all, right now there's so many people out here in the coaching market. The coaching market has never been more saturated than right now.
Right.
Right. So what happens in a saturated market? Well, consumers become more skeptical. They take longer making a decision. It takes longer to develop that relationship. We also have economic pressures that are also pushing on that type of behavior right now. People, just like even compared to like a year ago, people aren't just jumping on things like they used to, because they got to think, well, damn, maybe the chicken at the grocery store is going to go up another $10 a pound this week. You know what I mean?
Worry, it probably will.
Yeah, it probably will, right? But that's on the back of people's minds. So what's happening is the buying cycle is taking longer these days.
Yeah, cool.
Right. So if you're not committed to generating leads and building a relationship with people long-term and nurturing them, you're already putting yourself behind the 8 ball for being successful in business.
Yeah.
Now, and as you know, 80% of the money is in the list.
Yeah.
And if you're building a business, you should be building it for long term, which would mean building a list.
Yeah.
And if we look at all of the data out of all of the things that show what makes money with internet marketing and things like that, the vast majority of all money is made on email.
Yep. Still.
Right? The profitability from email is still the highest. Most of the money is still made from email. Right. So we want to use our ads to generate a list of emails, and then we can also try to construct it in a way to recover some or all of our day one ad spend if we do the funnel right, because there's so many different ways we can do these things. Depending on everybody's assets, you know what I mean? So, there's ways that you can do that. But generally speaking, if you are going to generate that list, you'll be able to long-term be a lot more successful than if you're just trying to drive ads into something, generate just a phone call, like is a popular model, right? You know, in this industry, if you're just getting those, sales calls, you're not getting as many people into your universe when you use that kind of funnel. Because the economics aren't the same. So, there's simple things that you can do, like have a lead magnet, and then you can offer your call right on the thank you page.
That's what I do.
And oftentimes you can get all these leads and get the calls at the same price as if you just drive them straight to doing the call.
Yeah, right? That's what I teach. Yep. And you know what's critical about this strategy? Again, it's funny. It actually, because I know a lot of coaches watching this, they're like, oh, I've tried a lead magnet, I've got leads onto my list, and they don't book appointments, right? Again, because it always comes back to that initial offer. It's like, what main painful problem are you solving? And then you work backwards from that, right? And then you create a lead magnet that is related to that problem. This gets you better quality leads. And then if they've got a painful problem, that's what makes them start booking appointments. For me, like that's why it always starts with it always starts with that offer. And that's really why a lot of coaches can't convert, because they don't have that, first of all, that clarity of what it is that they sell, so they don't communicate. And then whatever that they've currently tried in the past, it's kind of like their messages. I mean, you've seen their message, right? Like this is what you do every day. Like just message all over the place. It's like, who are you? Like you read the website or the funnel, like who are we even kind of like speaking to? I don't even know what the problem is. And so no wonder it doesn't work. So what, in terms of that's good. So I like that because it's simple, especially like getting money.
I have a comment I want to add on this, because I have seen in the scenario that you brought up there where coaches, they build a funnel. It's a lead magnet funnel. They're getting people to opt in, but they're not booking appointments on the back end. It's because it one of two reasons, usually both. The messaging on the front end, right? Like the hook that they're using for the lead magnet or the title of the lead magnet itself, it didn't hit a right pain point.
Right.
And two, they're not actually selling the value of the call. That's a huge area that I see people make mistakes with strategy session funnels, because they just copy some other Joe Schmo usually, right? Or they'll funnel hack somebody, and they'll just use like bland language, like schedule your strategy session with me. Right? That don't work anymore, right? Like one of the things that I'm having people doing when that stuff comes up is, we're renaming the call itself, right? And putting a value-based language in the call. Then what we're also making sure we're doing is highly selling the call with the language we're using when we're offering it. Right? And it's all benefit driven over what they're going to get out of the call, and using sales resistance language or removal language, right? Sales resistance removal language, like, hey, we're going to help you with this, whether we do business or not. This whole call, at the end of the call, we're going to be able to determine if we might be a good fit or not. And if we are, I'll tell you what that might look like. Right? So it's all language like that is strategically designed to try to disarm the sales resistance, because that's what's going on with these things. That's why people won't book them, is because they think they're not going to get any value out of the call, and all it's going to be is some kind of sales pitch, because every single person on this planet basically at this point knows what a strategy session is a veiled sales call, or that's it.
It's funny when you do this really well, like going back to your actual ad campaigns, because I saw an ad come up of yours probably about a few months ago, but you ran it for maybe almost 12 months. It was the one where it was like an ad it was a picture of like a diagram, and it was straight to a strategy session, right? It was to a sales letter that pitched a strategy session. And that's what the sales letter was. It was like, hey, here's what the call is about, and overcoming those objections to make sure that, hey, irregardless of whether we work together or not, this is the value that you're going to get. So just speaking to that. And you ran it for a long time, so I assumed that it got you a lot of strategy calls.
Oh yeah, that thing works really well.
Yeah.
I could turn it back on right now if I needed cold traffic, and it would work today.
Yeah. So that's what, like, this is the thing, like you're speaking about like pitching to an email list, which is warm, but if you get that pitch right of like a free call, you can literally go, and that's what I do with my client with the infidelity one. We literally go from ad to application to book an appointment. Like that's how short the funnel is. So when you get your message right, you can really shorten that sales cycle a lot.
Absolutely. And that's why, and that's a good point. The reason I was able to do that was because I already had my messaging figured out.
Exactly right. Yeah.
I knew what that urgent problem was, and my whole call was designed specifically to solve that thing. So and the thing is, the nice thing about that particular problem in my industry is it's an evergreen problem. It never goes away.
Yeah. It was scaling. Getting over $1,000 a day without it falling apart or something.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool.
Exactly.
All right. So I think we pretty much covered. I mean, the offer is so critical. Now, what is it about? Like, again, as I say, a coach kind of just getting into advertising. They craft their offer. They create a simple system just to get in leads and appointments. What is it that we haven't discussed about being successful with this approach, like paid advertising and that approach, that you think, if anything, that we need to bring up?
I think people, we should probably expand more on the idea of expectations, right? And how much we need to like do different things in order to really get this to work. And, that was kind of harping back to my example of the first letter, and people do one thing and then they give up. I see that all the time with the ad tests, right? They'll build a funnel, they'll put up some ad tests, spend a little bit of money, they don't get the results they want, and then it's like, oh, well, it's not working.
Yep.
And then they don't really know what to do at that point, or they'll give up, right?
Yeah.
Or they'll completely shift gears entirely, right? It's like, oh, the whole thing's messed, I got to start all over. And then they go from doing, Russell Brunson's thing to Todd Brown's thing or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think it's the mechanism, the unique mechanism. Yeah. I think it's the mechanism that's the problem.
Exactly, because that's what people are telling them, right? Well, it's because I don't have the perfect webinar script, or it's because I don't have this 6-step, 8-figure funnel formula. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so that like, there's a lot of misconceptions out there in the market about what it takes to be successful, right? So one of the things that I have a lot of people doing is tell them, like, once you get into this, if you're coming into my world, you got to shut all the other stuff out.
Yeah.
You really do, right? Because if you're going to come into my world and then you're going to start getting distracted by all the other things, you're never going to be successful. right? So I have a coaching program, right? And so that's most of what I'm doing in my coaching program. Like I'm working with a lot of, neophyte entrepreneurs, right? That have shiny object syndrome, right? And I got a gal right now, she's working the system. She's getting the results. She's started her own agency, right?
Yeah, cool.
She's getting people coming through from the Upwork strategy, right? She's sent out contracts. She's done
good strategy. Yeah,
already.
that's so good.
Yep. She just hasn't closed the deal yet. And it's only been like about 30 days and she's gotten all this activity, right? And she's got like several things that are about to pop, but she was already starting to get despaired, right? And she was like wondering, oh, well, should I, what do I do? And I was like, well, you haven't even finished executing on what we've talked about. You need to keep doing more of what I told you to do. And she even started asking me because I added a new sales course into my membership site from Cole Gordon. I've been partnering with people and getting them in there.
Course. I'm going through that at the moment, actually. I told you, but for everyone, great sales course.
Well, she was going through it, and then she's like asked me today on the call. She's like, "Man, maybe I should just give all up and be a setter." Cole seems to think that that's great, right? See, and this is the exact point that I'm talking about. Right. And then I had to tell her like, no.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I get clients like that all the time where it's like, they've got like, they've launched their ad campaign, right? They've never had an ad campaign work, let alone people kind of opting in, right? So that's working. We usually do that within like 30 days, right? That's pretty straightforward. Just get lead magnet opt in. So they opted in, right? They're getting appointments. People are showing up to their sales calls, but they just haven't got that final hurdle of a sale. And they're like, oh, this is not working. It's like, what do you mean? You're up to like the last step. Like you're getting appointments.
Well, what's not working in that scenario is them.
Exactly.
Literally,
right.
It's them, and that's the really hard part when you're trying to coach these kind of people, because nobody wants to ever hear that. Nobody wants to ever hear it's them. But it's like, hey, if they're getting there and they're not buying, then it's you. It literally is you. There can be nothing else. It is not you. You can't blame the ads. You can't blame any other.
Yeah.
Right? It is you, right? And so we got to make these people. They got to be recording their calls. And they need to be listening to them with their coach, because usually they're saying something wrong. They're communicating weird. They might not be following a script at all. You know what I mean? Like, because those are the biggest things that I see is that people will wing it. They don't have a process. I don't teach people to use a word for word script, but you need to have a framework for how you're like taking people through your process to close them. Right. Yeah. And you also got to be communicating to people in a very clear and concise manner what your offer is. Yeah. If you can't do that on these calls, you won't close on a call. Never. Right. And we can change the ads. We can tweak the audience. We can mess with the message. We can dink with the funnel all we want. But at the end of the day, if we get all these people in front of you and the sales aren't happening, where is the problem?
That's what I say. But I'm excited at that point because I know that as soon as we get that sorted, like the sales are just going to start coming through.
Sometimes you can't. Like some coaches, they just can't sell. You know what I mean? So like then you got to get a salesperson in. That's the only way to like solve it.
Yeah. And actually, let's address one final thing before we wrap up. And that's like a budget. So I'll tell you what I teach in a minute. But for me personally, I don't think you need a massive budget for to get clients. So what do you teach in terms of like how the budgeting works? Like let's say a testing budget or whatever. How should coaches approach that?
I don't tell anybody to do more than maybe $150 a day in testing. Like that's on the high end. You can do as little as $20 a day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So the difference. So for coaches that are like getting started, generally my clients are spending about $30 to $50 a day. And then the high end for the testing phases is $100 to $150. Even if like I'm working with if I'm working with like a 7-figure coach with a brand new offer that we don't know if it's going to convert yet, I still keep it at like $100, $150 a day. Because you don't need to spend a lot just to test that message. But obviously the downside of a lower budget, you just have to be a bit more patient for the appointments to come through. That's the only difference. You just kind of have to wait.
Yeah.
That's what you have to do at a low, when you kind of have that cash flow restriction. But yeah, you can get started with just a $20 to $30 a day budget, which I think is great, even with today's ad costs, which are quite a lot higher than what they were 5-6 years ago.
It is, and that's another part of the expectations when they go into these things, because this is like with the budgets and results. This is another area that I see a lot of mismet expectations, right? Because like in a strategy session funnel, typically you're going to see a booking for somewhere between $100 to $200. Like that's somebody booking on your call, depending on what market you're in, right? Let's just say it's $100 for for $200. Let's say it's $200 for better math purpose, because that's more realistic, actually. Right? So let's say you're spending $50 a day, and you actually are achieving a $200 booking. Well, what most people think is they spend $50. They're like, why didn't I get a booking today? Or they get a booking on the first day, they spend $50, and then they don't get any for 3 days. They're like, why didn't I get any for 3 days? Well, duh. If we're hitting $200 on average, you shouldn't have one. You're only going to have one every 4 days. Right. But what happens is they get that crack hit from Facebook right away that gives them the one immediately. And then their expectation immediately shifts into thinking, oh, well, this is what's going to happen, and this is what I should get. And then they get disappointed when it doesn't happen, and they don't wait out the average till they get another one. They shut it off thinking something's wrong when it's not. And even then, like, it's not going to be perfectly one appointment every 4 days. Like, it'll still be a bit volatile, right? Like, it could be 2 appointments in 4 days and then nothing for another 6 days, and then maybe one, and then a 2. Like, it's up and down like that. And that's what I learned. It'll be up and down. But what we're looking for is to average these numbers, right? And that's what and this is the last point I want to leave for your people, because you were talking about the things that they need to be aware of. Philosophically, this is like the biggest thing. It's getting caught up in these day-to-day fluctuations of results and having proper expectations of how results should happen, especially as it relates to budget and your KPIs and your funnel and stuff like that. Right. So like, if you spend $50 a day, right, you're not going to get Y results every day. You're not going to spend 50 and get like 10 leads every day or one booking every day. It doesn't work that way, but everybody thinks it should. And in their mind, that's what they're looking for, and they're expecting for consistency. Right. And then what happens is we have these day-to-day fluctuations. One day it's really good. The next day it sucks balls. It's over here. It's okay. Right. But if we back out and we average it, it averages into our numbers if we do the things appropriately in the systems, the way I teach them anyways. Right. And you've experienced that. Right. So I always tell people to don't be analyzing on a day-to-day basis. You have to be looking at bigger picture data, right? And backing out and making sure that these things average, and understanding these relations between how conversions should happen and when to your budget. And when you can sit back and let things run and understand those things, you'll actually have campaigns that work a lot more frequently than don't. And you'll have a lot less work that you actually have to do in the campaigns, managing stuff and creating ads. A lot of people actually manage themselves out of campaigns by not understanding these relationships and how things should be going. They have improper expectations of that stuff.
Absolutely. It's funny, once you know it, we've been doing it for so long, and I learned pretty much everything I know from you in terms of scaling ads. And once you know how to manage it, it's very hands off. Like, it's we don't spend much time actually like tweaking out. Like, once it's launched, we don't actually spend much time like touching the ads, right? It's just like, is it working? Is it in KPI? Then you can add budget or reduce budget or whatever. But from there, once it's launched, you're not really touching it after that. So.
Now once you got stuff working right, and if you're doing things properly, if you're like, I was actually on a call with another person earlier today, in a coaching call. And it was a new client, and I knew when this guy was telling me stuff about, I knew he was one of them people that sits there and button smashes on the refresh all day. And I was like, dude, you can't be sitting there button smashing that thing, like refreshing the stats all day long, and then trying to make changes in the middle of the day. Like,
exactly.
For a lot of reasons, the most important being the data is not real time, and it's delayed up to 72 hours. And so if you're like trying to do all that stuff, you're literally making false decisions all day long. You're doing a whole bunch of extra work for no reason. And you're literally putting yourself in a place where you're going to create anxiety in your life that you don't need to have.
One of the first rules I remember you teaching when I was working at agency was you don't ever want to base your decisions off 1 day's worth of data, right? You want to look at trending. Like, is it over 3? So I look at kind of different windows, right? So we've got the 3-day window, then a 7-day window, like the last 3 days, last 7 days. How's it trending? So last 3 days is a big one that I look at. And is it going in? Is it going out? But more trending in and out is what I'm looking at to base decisions.
And that stuff hasn't changed. iOS 14 hasn't.
I know. I don't pay any attention to any of that stuff. All I focus on what we spoke about at the beginning. I know if I have a great offer right? Start there. That's 80% of the work done for me. Then it's a little bit of copy, and then Facebook will do the rest. Like they'll find the right audience for your offer if you just get that part right. And all the iOS stuff, I literally paid like zero attention to it because I knew that's not what makes your campaigns convert. And it's like, so anyway,
it's not like when you see that kind of stuff in the market, that's just really savvy people like me focusing on a fear that's in the market to sell.
Yeah, exactly right. Oh, well, that's a good place to leave off the interview. So, Jason, where can people go to learn more about you and your coaching? You've got an amazing program that's actually the entry level is just, I asked you the other day, I'm like, dude, why are you selling this at such a low price point? Because it's ridiculously low for the value that you get. So anyone that wants to get into ads, I recommend, go see Jason and his program. Anyway, where can they go to learn more about you?
Yeah, it's just academyofadvertising.com. Cool. Yeah, and then I have a program called it's a membership program called the Academy of Advertising Profit Society, where people get access to my entire membership site. I've actually been creating courses and stuff now since 2013.
Yeah.
And this is all I spend my time on is building new tools and systems and processes. I'm not doing so much coursework. My courses are very short. They're very straight to the point, short videos that just show people exactly how to implement strategy. And then the rest of what I do is I build like documents and, systems and processes for people to be able to put their messaging together and put creative together really quickly. Right. That's all effective. So the membership's $95 a year. And the reason I did that, Luke, is I've strategically been rebuilding my business since 2017. Specifically for
I remember you telling me that I was. That's why the agency side. I remember you telling me when I was working in the agency, and that's exactly what you were doing.
Yeah, and that was based off of reading this book, Perennial Seller, back in 2017
I remember
by Ryan Holiday.
Right?
So the reason I built this product this way is because I made it to be what I believe is hands down the best product on the market in the world ever created to help anybody advertise anything anywhere online. That was my goal with it. And then the other piece I wanted to add to it was making it affordable for anybody, right? It's $95 a year, right? We used to sell individual courses for $2,000 that are in here. We sold thousands of units of them. Right? I lowered it down to that because I don't want any barrier to entry for anybody to be able to come in here. And this, we've got people can come into Academy of Advertising. They can start a business from scratch with the material that's in there. It's not limited just to people that are already in a business, right? But the people that are in business right now, I've got everything sorted and segmented. So no matter what level you're at, you can go right to the parts that are relevant to you. And then we give a Facebook group as well where people get access to me and I help them out with their stuff in there.
Yeah, you do. I'm in there and I still ask questions in that one. So I still use so the other day, actually, I logged into the membership. I'm like, dude, where's the course that I bought like 4 years ago? And you're like, oh, dude, that's outdated. I'm like, no, I don't care about like the how to set your ads up. Because I knew that what you teach is actually, it's not outdated. It's because you're teaching the fundamentals. And that's what I said to them. Like, I want the campaign manager that I just hired to go through your course just to look at like, how do you craft an offer? Like, how do you do the positioning? Because that stuff is forever, is evergreen kind of thing. And you're like, dude, my course is like $95. Just grab that. It's all up to date. And she can, go through that and see all the latest stuff in that as well. So no brainer. I think, so anyway, also Academy of Advertising, that's the link, right?
Academyofadvertising.com. Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. So with that being said, dude, thanks for coming on. I knew this was going to be a good interview, and it was amazing. So I appreciate you coming on for the very first interview. And so for everyone tuning in, thanks for tuning in for the first episode. There's many more of these to come over the coming, weeks, months, and years. We're going to be doing probably about one a week. We'll be releasing, and they will be premiering inside the Facebook group initially, which is the hermithole.com. So if you just go to thehermithole.com, you'll be able to watch these, and then they'll go out to like iTunes and Stitcher and Spotify and all the podcast platforms. So with that being said, thanks again, Jason, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. See you then. Cheers.
All right.